My name is Jessica. I'm 28 years old. We were having one of those perfect evenings, the kind of quiet, comfortable night you just take for granted after 5 years of marriage. The air smelled like lemon dish soap and the last bits of the chicken dinner we just finished. He washed, I dried. It was our little routine, this unspoken dance we did in the kitchen that that I always found so comforting. It felt equal, like a real partnership. He was always proud of that, mentioning how he pitched in more than most guys he knew, and I loved him for it. I loved the easy quiet between us, the way his arm brushed mine when he passed me a plate, the soft look in his eye when he'd catch me watching him. In our warm, safe kitchen bubble, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. I had a husband, Mark, who I thought I knew inside and out, my partner in everything. We'd built a life on what I was sure was mutual respect and a deep, easy love. We'd been through job losses, family sickness, all the little stresses of life, and we always came out of it as a team. I was so sure of us. And in that cozy, deluded certainty, I asked a playful question, a hypothetical I thought I knew the answer to. I was dead wrong, and his answer didn't just break my heart. It showed me that the man I'd been sleeping next to for 5 years was a total and complete stranger. One question, that's all it took. One little question tossed out like a joke while we were doing the dishes, and our whole world blew up. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't some kind of test. It was just an idle thought I had after a movie we'd watched. I asked him with a smile, honestly expecting a sweet, reassuring answer I could file away with all the other sweet things he'd said. Instead, I got a shard of glass, an answer so cold and ugly it ripped through the reality of our marriage and showed me the truth of the man I'd given my life to. A truth so vile it had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. He handed me the last of the silverware, his hands moving in that familiar, practiced way. I took the damp forks, polishing them under the warm kitchen lights until they shone. The only sounds were the hum of the fridge and the clink of metal as I put everything away. I was feeling sentimental, just basking in how peaceful everything was. You know, I started, my voice light and a little teasing. That movie got me thinking. Crazy story, right? He chuckled. Yeah, a little out there, but sweet. It made me wonder, though, I said, turning to lean against the counter. I looked at his face, the face I loved so much, the lines around his eyes, the stubble on his chin. I felt this huge rush of love for him. Hypothetical question for you. Ready? He leaned in, playing along. Hit me. I smiled, my heart feeling so full. Would you still love me if I were black? I asked it with all the innocence in the world. I really thought he'd laugh, pull me in for a hug, and say something like, of course, you idiot. I'd love you if you were purple with green polka dots. I was waiting for him to say my name with that loving sigh he used when I was being silly, but he didn't. The smile on his face didn't disappear. It just froze. It turned into a mask. His eyes, which were just sparkling, went distant and cold. The room got quiet, but it was a heavy, awful silence we'd never had before. He looked away, down at the sink full of suds, like he was looking for an answer in the bubbles. Mark, I said softly. A little knot of confusion started forming in my stomach. He let out a long, tired sigh and pulled the plug on the sink. He still wouldn't look at me. I don't know, honey. That's that's a tough one. My smile wobbled. Tough? What do you mean tough? It's a yes or no question. He finally turned to me, but his face was all serious, like a dad about to explain something complicated. Well, no, it's not. It's not that simple. He paused, and the care he took, choosing his next words, was disturbing. If you were black, you wouldn't be you. The words just hung there. They made no sense. It was like he'd suddenly started speaking another language. You wouldn't be you. I just stared at him, my brain scrambling to catch up. What did you just say? My voice was a whisper. He must have seen the pure shock on my face because he immediately went into damage control. But it was the kind of damage control that just makes everything 100 times worse. He started talking faster, gesturing with his hands like he could physically push away the ugliness of what he'd just said. Look, all I mean is you because of your background, your family, how you grew up. You can't just swap out a skin color. It's a whole different culture. We probably wouldn't have even met. Our worlds wouldn't have crossed paths. It was a flood of flimsy excuses, and each one was more horrible than the last. He was trying to make it sound logical, like, it was all about circumstances. But all I heard was him trying to justify a prejudice so deep he couldn't even properly explain it. So, your love for me is conditional? I asked, my voice starting to shake. It depends on my background? On my race? No, that's not what I'm saying, he shot back, getting frustrated. Don't twist my words. I'm not a racist. You know that. I went to school with black guys. I've worked with them. Oh, I don't have a problem with black people. It was the classic pathetic defense. The go to line for someone who wants to keep their prejudice without being called a bigot. It was a meaningless, insulting statement. So you tolerate them, I said, the hurt turning into a hot, sharp anger. You can work next to them, but the idea of being married to one, of loving one, that's the line. The idea of me, the woman you promised to love for better or worse, being black is so repulsive you can't even say yes to a silly hypothetical question. It's not repulsive, he insisted, his face getting red. It's just different. The cultural differences are a big deal. How can you really understand someone from a completely different background? The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. He's standing there talking about not being able to understand someone from a different background. And in that exact moment, I was realizing I didn't understand him at all. This man, my husband, was a total stranger. A cold dread washed over me. The warm kitchen suddenly felt like a cold, sterile interrogation room. I took a step back from him. My mind started racing, replaying the last 5 years through this awful new filter. Had this been him the whole time? How did I not see it? And then the memories started bubbling up. Little things that meant nothing at the time, but now they were glowing with a sinister light. That comment he made about that side of town when we were looking for a house, the way he dismissed a movie I wanted to see because it was too political, when its only crime was having a black lead. The racist joke his uncle told at Thanksgiving that I was furious about, while Mark just shrugged and said, "That's just him, don't make a scene." I'd seen them as one offs, ignorance maybe. I made excuses for him. I told myself he was a good person, but now all those little red flags were becoming one giant banner waving right in my face. I had been living a lie, loving a man I'd made up in my head. The Mark I thought I knew would have laughed at my question. He would have held my face and kissed me and said my race could never change who I was to him. But that Mark wasn't real. The real Mark was standing right in front of me, defending the indefensible. He was still talking, still trying to justify himself. You're getting emotional. You're not thinking rationally. It's just about compatibility, that's all. I held up a hand. Stop, I said. My voice was suddenly calm. The anger was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. The argument was over. This wasn't a disagreement we could compromise on. This was a moral failing. His. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him call my name, a little panic in his voice now. I ignored him. I sat on the living room sofa staring at the blank TV. My husband had just become my roommate. The love of my life was a stranger whose beliefs I found disgusting, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that nothing would ever be the same. The rest of the night was just suffocating silence. He tried to break it a couple of times with these half hearted apologies that weren't really apologies. "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings," was the classic non apology he tried, which just proved he still didn't get it. He hadn't just hurt my feelings, he had completely destroyed my image of him. I went to bed and lay on the very edge of the mattress, my back to him. I could feel his presence in the dark, his breathing heavy. For the first time in our marriage, the space between us felt like a canyon. He was an intruder in my bed, and my heart was pounding like I'd heard a strange noise downstairs. I didn't sleep a wink. I just stared into the dark, replaying our entire relationship in my head. Every "I love you," every inside joke was now tainted. Was his love always this shallow? Was I just an accessory that fit his life? Someone whose appearance he approved of? The question of whether you love someone for who they are or what they are was screaming in my mind. His answer made it painfully clear. He loved me for what I was, not who I was. By the time the sun started creeping in, I was done. The grief and shock had burned away, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't something I could fix. It wasn't my job to fix him. My job was to respect myself enough to walk away from someone whose love came with terms and conditions. I got up, showered, and dressed. He was in the kitchen making coffee, trying to act like it was just another morning. He looked up at me with this nervous, hopeful smile. "Morning," he said. I made coffee. I walked past him and stood on the other side of the island, keeping that space between us. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, my voice totally steady. He leaned against the counter, his expression cautious. "Okay, I know you're still upset. I was out of line last night. I'm sorry. Let's just forget about it." I just shook my head slowly. "No, I've been thinking all night, and you were right about one thing. We do come from different backgrounds." His face lit up with relief, thinking I finally got his point. "Exactly, that's all I was trying to say." "No," I cut him off. "You don't understand. Our backgrounds are different because I was raised to believe that a person's worth has nothing to do with their skin color. I was raised to believe love is about a person's soul. You apparently were not. You were raised to believe race is a deal breaker. That's not a cultural difference, Mark. That's prejudice. And it's not a small thing, it's everything." The color drained from his face. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," I said, my voice getting stronger, "is that I've spent 5 years loving a man who thinks my very essence is tied to my skin color. That if I looked different, I wouldn't be me. You don't see me. You see a list of traits you find acceptable, and I can't live with that. I won't be with a man whose love is so fragile a hypothetical question can break it, and I sure as hell won't raise children with a man who will pass that poison on to them." I took a deep breath. This was it. "I'm leaving, Mark. It's over." He just stared at me, his mouth hanging open. He honestly thought this was something we'd just sweep under the rug. He thought I'd get over it. He thought I'd always say yes. He finally spoke. "You're leaving? Just like that? Over one stupid conversation, you're throwing away 5 years? You threw it away last night," I said, my voice flat. "You threw it away when you showed me the ugliness in your heart. This isn't about one conversation. It's about realizing the person I promised my life to believes in a hierarchy of human value, and I will never be okay with that." I didn't wait for a response. There was nothing else to say. I walked into our bedroom, my bedroom, and pulled a suitcase down from the closet. My hands were perfectly steady. With every sweater I folded, every pair of jeans I packed, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. The pain was huge, don't get me wrong. a deep, tearing grief for the man I thought I married and the future I thought we had. But under the pain was a new feeling: freedom. I was choosing myself. I was choosing my integrity. I was refusing to make myself smaller to fit into his prejudiced little world. He stood in the doorway watching me, his face a mess of confusion and pathetic pleading. "Anne, please," he said, "don't do this. We can talk. We can work through it. I'll I'll go to therapy. I'll read books. I can change." I stopped packing and looked at him. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt sad and a little bit of pity. "Maybe you can, Mark," I said quietly, "and I really hope you do. But it won't be with me. This is your work to do. My work is to leave." I zipped the suitcase. I walked towards the door, and he just stood there, a ghost in the home we built. As I passed him, I couldn't look at his face. I just looked at the floor, at the canyon between us that would never be bridged. Walking out that front door was the hardest and easiest thing I've ever done. The life I knew was over, but a new one, built on truth and self respect, was just beginning. It's been 6 months. The divorce hurts, of course. It's a clean kind of pain, though, not the toxic, soul crushing pain of living against my own values. I've learned that some differences aren't just disagreements, they're revelations. They show you who a person really is deep down. And you can't build a life on a rotten foundation, no matter how much you love the house you thought you were building. I didn't just leave a marriage, I reclaimed my soul. He thought I'd always say yes, that I'd accept any part of him to keep the peace. He was wrong. I didn't explain anymore, I just left. And in that silence, I said everything. So I have to ask you, what would you have done? Could you stay with someone after finding out they held a prejudice that goes against everything you believe? Have you ever had a moment that completely changed how you saw someone you loved? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe for more.